Long live Christ the King. These were the dying words of a 14-year-old boy, Jose Luis Sanchez del Rio, who was martyred in 1928 in Mexico. Now you might be asking, a little boy, 14 years old, a martyr, or Mexico, a Catholic country where the Blessed Mother appeared in 1531 at Guadalupe, the first apparition in the New World? Yes. Take your minds back to 1917. Mexico went through its own Bolshevik kind of revolution, an atheistic, communist kind of revolution. The Constitution was changed. A persecution of the church began. Priests were stripped of their citizenship. Religious orders were disbanded. Religious freedom became now freedom of worship, so the state licensed churches to have Mass, but all the Catholic schools, orphanages, nursing homes, hospitals, which were the majority throughout Mexico, were either taken over by the government or they were closed. The situation became worse. In 1924, General Plutarco Calles, who himself was an atheist who hated the church, one could say almost truly a diabolical person, wanted to destroy the church. Priests had to renounce their allegiance to the Pope and pledge their allegiance to the state, or they would be imprisoned and even executed. The persecution was so bad that even the phrase adios, go with God, was outlawed. Well, in response, a movement called the Cristeros, after Christ, the Cristeros was formed, and they became a rebellious force against this new kind of atheistic state. The movement had its motto, "Long live Christ the King." Jose Luis, this 14-year-old boy, wanted to serve. He came from a very devout family. He was too young to actually bear arms, but they allowed him to carry the flag and also sent him on like little secret missions. He was known as Tarsicius. Remember, St. Tarsicius of the old Roman persecution times was about 13 years old. He would bring Holy Communion into the prisons to the Christians who were awaiting martyrdom. So little Jose Luis did the same, bringing Holy Communion to those Catholics, especially priests, that were confined in prison. He also brought people, particularly children, to attend the masses that were being offered secretly throughout Mexico. However, on February 6, 1928, during a battle, the general of the Cristeros' horse had been killed. And so little Jose Luis said to him, "Take my horse and save yourself. You are the general, and what am I worth to the cause?" Well, the general escaped. Little Jose Luis was captured. He was taken to his home parish, which the church had now been transformed into a jail, and there he was confined. The mayor told him that if he would betray Christ, if he would renounce his faith, then he would be set free. He responded, "I would rather die than betray Christ and my country." During his time of captivity, he would really preach from the bar's window, and he would preach to especially the children, exhorting them to keep their faith. But finally, just 4 days later, on February 10th, the order came for him to be executed. He wrote to his mother. He said, "Dear Mama, I think I'm going to die, but that doesn't matter at all. Please accept God's will. I die very happy because I die on the battlefield right next to the Lord. Don't let yourself be distraught by my death, because that would only upset me more. Rather, tell my other brothers to follow the example of Christ. Be strong, and please send me your blessings together with Dad's. Accept the love of your son, who misses you very much." That night, he was beaten. The soles of his feet were cut. The next morning early, he was awakened and then he set out on his 1-mile journey to the cemetery where he would be executed. One can imagine how he left a bloody path of footprints all the way to that cemetery. As he was being led, the soldiers said, "Renounce Christ, say death to Christ the King, and we'll let you live." And he always responded, "Long live Christ the King." When he arrived at the cemetery, they made him dig his own grave. And once again they asked him, "What do you want your parents to be told?" He said, "That we will see each other in heaven. I forgive all of you. Long live Christ the King and the Virgin of Guadalupe." They shot him. He was still barely alive, and with his own blood he made the sign of the cross on the ground. And then the commander went over and shot him in the head. He died, but he died to a new life, a life in heaven. He's a canonized saint now. October 16th, Pope Francis canonized this little boy, Jose Luis Sanchez del Rio. He died a free man. He died with Christ. He didn't let the forces of this world control his life. He died free. And so, my brothers and sisters, we might ask, well, why this story? Why this story on the Feast of Christ the King? Because it's a story that is simply one remake of countless remakes of the story of the crucifixion. All throughout the history of the church, this story has been retold, the story of the crucifixion, but in the lives of the faithful. So there we think that as we celebrate this Feast of Christ the King, we remember Christ came to save us. That's the key. He came to save us. And we, if we accept him as our King, will be saved. We have no fear, even of death itself. So Jesus, true God, became true man, humbling himself, taking on our human nature to give us a greater human nature than even Adam and Eve had, to elevate us and allow us to share in his divinity through grace. Christ came to perfectly reveal God's truth and God's love so that we could live rightly, following that right path of life, and also to establish a kingdom of justice and peace. For only when there is truth and love will there be justice, and only then will there be true peace. Christ came by his cross and resurrection to give us the hope of everlasting life. So this is the King that we pledge our allegiance to. Granted, though, in all the remakes of the story, there will always be those that say, "Come down from that cross and save yourself," just as the soldiers did, just as the Jewish leaders did, just as the crowds did. Come down from the cross, save yourself, and then we'll believe. Would they really? How pitiful that is, really, when you think about it. Lower your standard. Abandon any sense of sacrifice. Come down and make us happy. And what if our Lord did? What if our Lord came down and he said, "Fine, I'll change the gospel teaching and you can do whatever you want to do. Forget about truth. Change the gospel to fit your merry lives." Or what if our Lord said, "Fine, do whatever it is to make you feel good, be happy. Think just of yourself. Make yourself happy for this fleeting moment." Or what if our Lord said, "Oh, you're just fine the way you are"? Would they have believed? No. They would have walked away and they would have scoffed and said, "You're just like us. What's there to believe in?" Sad, but true. But our Lord didn't come down from that cross. He wants us to raise ourselves up to that cross, to live and reign with him. Christ is a victorious King. And we keep him, that image, on the cross to remind us that's the standard. That's the bearer of victory, that cross. No matter what century of the church, no matter what persecution, that cross is victorious. Christ conquered sin through forgiveness. Christ conquered suffering, transforming it not from something meaningless, transforming it into something redemptive, something that has value. Christ conquered death through his resurrection, giving us the hope of everlasting life. And Christ conquered falsehood, error, evil itself with his truth. Truth will always be victorious. Error will always self-destruct. Ask yourself, where's the kingdom of the Romans? Where's the kingdom of the Pharisees? Or we could go further. Where's the kingdom of the French Revolution, or the Third Reich, or the Soviet Union, with all the errors that they pronounced and all the persecution they waged against the church? Where's General Plutarco Calles? He was deposed, cast off, lived in a solitary life, and died a slow, painful death of cancer, all alone. That's where error leads. It self-destructs. But the cross is victorious, and Christ stays on that cross to remind us with him we can be victorious. And so, my brothers and sisters, on this feast of Christ the King, we pledge our allegiance, just as little Jose Luis did, to Jesus the King. Remain with him, he'll remain with you. Live with him, you will always live with him. If you truly unite your life to him through prayer, through worship, the sacraments, he will always be with you. Never forget that. And for you young people who may be the same age as little Jose Luis, 14 years old, be very careful, because there will still be those Romans and crowds and Pharisees that say, save yourself. Come to our side. Yes, come follow us. And we will offer you social status. We'll offer you fun. We'll offer you wealth, material things. We'll offer you the alcohol, the sex, the drugs, whatever you want, we'll offer it to you. And when you are broke, busted, and alone, and addicted, where will they be? They won't be with you. But there'll still be that Christ on the cross with his arms open to welcome you back. But don't go astray. Christ is the one who came to save. We can't save ourselves. No one else can save us, only Christ. Pledge yourself to Christ the King, and you'll always find a kingdom of peace in your own heart. You'll find love and joy in your own heart. Christ will allow us to reign with him. Christ is victorious. May God bless you.